Hello and welcome to my video tutorial for Java for Beginners Part 4. Now last time we did a quiz, and here is that quiz. But that took a lot of code, and to be honest, most of it was just copy-paste. You might be thinking there's a more efficient way of writing this program, and you'd be right. We can rewrite this program using what's called an array, and we can also integrate into that loops, for and while loops. But first, let me teach you a bit about that. Now let's create a new class and call it array. An array is a type of variable, and an array can be any type of variable. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say you wanted an array with strings. So you write string, and then open close square brackets. And then you write the name of your variable, so I'll call mine test, equals new string, and then you write the size of your array. Now what an array actually is a table of information. Here in these two square brackets you say how big you want your table to be. For example, you could have a table that is 2 by 2. Now we have an array test which is 2 by 2. So now we have a 2 by 2 table of information. But right now we don't have any information in that table. Now working with arrays is a little tricky. Let's say you wanted to add a value to the second column and second row of your table. Now what you would think you would write is test 2 equals test. What it's saying here is that the variable test in the second column in the second row equals test. Unfortunately, they've made it a little more difficult than that. You see, this is how a 2 by 5 array table would look like. So you have your 2 rows and your 5 columns. But what they have done is set the value of the first column and the first row as 0 and 0. So even though you have 5 columns and you have 2 rows, the first one is actually called 0, 0. That means your second row, second column, which is the one we were trying to do in the program, is not actually called 2, 2, but 1, 1, because this starts at 0 and this starts at 0. So it would look more like this. However, if you declare the array as this, 0 by 1, you won't actually get a 5 by 2 table. You'll get a 0 by 1 table. So it is important to write the normal size of your table, but when you're actually setting in a value, it is important to encompass the zeros. So if we did it here, instead of it being 2, 2, test is actually 1, 1. You can see it here if we write it in the system.
If we run this, you'll find that it says exception thread main 2. This means that it can't find this piece of information because it actually doesn't exist. So if we take that out, and we take this out, you receive test 1. There are other ways, or other variable types in which you can use an array. For example, you can make a double array.
And instead of writing, you can put numbers. There are other ways of entering an information into an array. So if you have a double array, you can write the information in like this. Now if you want to show these values, this will be the value of 0, 1. This will be the value of 1, 0. And this will be the value of 1, 1. Now we can also incorporate loops into arrays. But first I should teach you more about loops. A loop is a piece of program that repeats itself for a specific time. Now if you know what that specific time is, you can use a while loop. For example, you can type while first we should declare the variable. Now we can put our while loop. Now we say while test is smaller than or equal to 100, print the value for test. Then, after that, we say test plus plus. When we run this, you'll see the numbers 1 to 100 are printed. What this basically saying is, first we're declaring our variable test with a value of 1. Then we're saying, while the value of test is smaller than or equal to 100, perform this action. System.out.println the value of test. Then add 1 to test. So when it goes back into the loop, because the value of test is still smaller than or equal to 100, it's repeating this again. But every time it repeats this, it adds 1. This means that after a while, it will have gone through this operation so many times that the value of test is now 100, at which point it will cease performing the operation. This is a nice way if you want to print a whole bunch of numbers at once. Instead of doing system.out.println 1, system.out.println 2, you can use a while loop to do it for you. A for loop is a little different. We use for loops if we do not know how many times the program is going to loop. Now we can do int I equals 1. I is smaller than or equal to 100, and I plus plus. These three components represent three different things. This I equals 1 represents the initialization. This initializes the loop. I is smaller than or equal to 100 terminates the loop. So when this reads false, so if I is no longer smaller than or equal to 100, it terminates the loop. And this is the increment, I++. So the increment of I is 1. 1 is added to I every time. Now if we run this, the number 1 is printed 100 times. Because I, 1, is going up by 1 until it reaches 100. And it is printing out test, which has a value of 1. Now I want you to see if you can create a loop within a loop, or for loop within a for loop, that creates a square. So what I mean is a for loop that will print out, for example, the value 0 in a square. Like this, a 3x3 square. Pause the video now and complete this program. Play the video once you are ready to see how it works. Here is how it works. First, you declare your variable that you want to print out, -0. Now I've created two for loops. For int I equals 1, I is smaller than or equal to 3, I++, do this. For a equals 1, a is smaller than or equal to 3, a++, print out num. Now what this does is, 3 times it will do this, because I increments by 1 and ends when at 3. It will do this 3 times. What this does is print out num, or the value of num, which is 0, 3 times. So what you then get is the console does this, 0, 0, 0. Now it's done that 3 times. It will do it again, because now I has incremented by 1 and is 2. 0, 0, 0. Now we'll do it a 3rd time until I reaches 3. 0, 0, 0. There you have your 3x3. So you can see here, if we run the program, you get a 3x3 grid. Now what you can actually do for extra is this. You can add in a scanner. So your user can actually determine how many columns and how many rows your grid has. Now I write this as rows because this is how many times this is going to happen. And I write this as columns because that is how many columns there will be. So if we try this again, I want there to be 3 rows and 3 columns. Now it prints out a 3x3 grid. You can even use this with arrays. For example, if you create an array, let's say